the future of aircraft. I chose this profession because I'm a dreamer. I wanted to dream, and it is a profession that lets you every day dream. Many things are going to be changing, and some of them sooner than you realize. And let me begin talking first about aircraft. In the US, the agenda for aircraft is set by NASA. And NASA has really prioritized 4 different topics. Noise. Aircraft are very noisy. I don't know how you feel about it if you live close to an airport in Beirut, but in the US, you know, when you live close to an airport, you really do not want to hear these airplanes. Emissions, they're very toxic. You were saying don't bother to have a business card because it's not good. Well, I can tell you that when aircraft fly, they're not really friendly for the ozone. And then the performance in terms of fuel burn, which creates a lot of emission. And finally, we want aircraft that can land on short distances so that they can use the metroplex concept, meaning that instead of having one major airport for one major city, we could have many small little airports where in agglomerations where multiple cities can share a distributed airport. Where does the dream come here? What you see here on this diagram in red is the current footprint of the noise compared to the size of an airport, which is on the extreme right of the picture. So you can see that it makes a lot of noise. And where we want to go is something that has almost the size of an airport so that only the people in the airport can hear it. Now, one thing we have done, and this is where the dream is going to come, is that we have already established as a community that the standard airplane that we know, meaning a tube and wings, is not going to allow to reach those objectives. And these objectives have to be reached before 30 years, and they started some 10 years ago. So we know that if we keep building airplanes that look like this, by 2030, we will not achieve the reduction of noise by 75%, the reduction of the fuel burn by 75%, and the reduction of the emissions by 75%. So what would they look like? This is how they're going to look like. And this is where the dream becomes a reality. These pictures look like they're taken from a comic book or a science fiction movie, but this is really the airplanes that your kids are going to fly in. And if we live long enough, we will be flying in within 15 to 20 years. They're fancy if you look at the left, but the most important thing is that if you look at the right, and you can see where dreams and inspirations come from, they're all designed to mimic what birds do. So we get the intuition from birds. We simply copy what birds do and try to understand how they do it, and we replicate it into aircraft. One thing that I'm personally very excited about it is that we're going to electric aircraft.
So how far are we? Is this a dream, or are we close to getting airplanes that are no longer using fuel but are powered by just electricity or solar panels?
So, you know, dreams are what make things happen. You just need an implementation plan so that dreams don't become nightmares, but dreams is really what fuels us. And electric cars are a reality now. And if you look at the number of cars that are produced every year, it's quite increasing. And a few years ago, Elon Musk from Tesla had stated something that many people in this business were already, conscious about, that we will see electric airplanes which means zero emission and very little noise compared to current airplanes, the day we can generate 400 watt-hours per kilogram of load that we want to carry. Today, we can generate 300. So we are only 25% away from the objective. Now, typically, the last 25% are always the hardest 25% to achieve. But I suspect that within 10 years, we will see private jets that will be flying electric. And probably within the next 15 to 20 years, we will see large airplanes that will probably bring us to Beirut on an electric airplane. So I want to show you something that is really suitable for this audience. It's all about startups, it's all about innovations, it's all about crazy ideas that suddenly are no longer crazy. If you look at these flying taxis, you see something in common. They're all based on quadpters, which means rotor blades, not on engines like you see on, except for one in the picture here. And they all have an even number of engines. There is a reason why it's even, like 2, 4, 8, 16. It's because it becomes much cheaper to do the control and to do the navigation, and there are no other control surfaces to fly these things. Only the blades that rotates fly them. But there is a problem. If one of these engines stopped functioning, this is not an airplane, you can't glide. Suddenly what's going to happen is that you're going to lose symmetry, and then you lose stability, and then we have a problem. So Mary Diane asked me when she was visiting one day, the brilliant question, well, if you lose one, why don't you turn off another one so that you maintain symmetry, and then you have two, and then you still have an even number, and you should be able to fly. Well, for this to happen, the two have to produce the same thrust, the same power as 4, which means they have to be over-dimensioned, and this comes the business model that is not going to work. So a former student of mine who designed this airplane at Uber Elevate, so Uber Elevate is the branch of Uber that is taking care of this, came and asked me to do something that I thought was crazy, but it's part of the dream. Fine. So the way we're going to convince government that this is safe is that if we lose one engine, we'll deploy a parachute. I said, deploying a parachute? Well, actually, he was aware of some things we were doing. There's a startup called Safe Skies that we have been pushing this parachute technologies, and they've been investing in it. And if we can run the movie,
yeah, it's running.
Is it running? So let me tell you that this is not a commercial. This is a serious airplane, a private jet, that got in trouble. Called the Coast Guard. The Coast Guards showed up to figure out where is that airplane going to crash so that they can go and help the pilot to get out. So what they did is that they filmed the whole thing because they were there early on.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it reached the point because I cannot see it here. That airplane had a parachute,
Yeah.
which was unthinkable. And the parachute functioned very well. And the aircraft landed safely on the water. Well, it got a lot of damage, but the pilot went out, and now it becomes the statistics for the insurance, but the human being was safe, and that was because of a parachute. Do we see it here?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
saw everything. So who wants a parachute when they fly? Everybody. So can we
So
have
every
this on?
flying taxi is going to come with a parachute. And because of this, and this is no joke, there are people who are talking now on putting parachutes on those big transatlantic airplanes. It's I mean, some people have put swimming pools in the airplanes, so you can put parachutes and dream there. But let me show you this to tell you where this really comes from. Now, when we're talking about dreaming, and when we're talking about don't get married so that you don't have to feel the financial pressure and you can dream, that's the ultimate job, is contributing to taking humankind to Mars. Now, let me show you how this is done. So this is Curiosity, and by the way, the boss of this operation was Charbel Farhat, another Lebanese who has run JPL for close to 14 years or 15 years, almost unheard of. So you have men and women who have kids, 28, 29 years old, who have dedicated their life
10 minutes before hitting the
to prepare these journeys to Mars, where you're going to send a rocket that has a capsule, the capsule that has the rover, and the rover is going to land on Mars. And the journey takes 8 months and a half. For 8 months and a half, you're sitting wondering what is happening. And then when you want to land this, it arrives close to the surface of Mars at Mach 2.7, which means roughly faster than what the Concorde used to fly at. And you have to slow it down before you land. So you have to pull a parachute. And it will ride for 2 minutes on that parachute. And the whole landing process will take 7 minutes. When the engineers at NASA know that the landing process has been triggered, they know it takes 7 minutes, but it takes 7 minutes to send the information back to Earth. So these are the toughest 7 minutes wondering whether the parachute functioned or it didn't function, and whether 8 months and a half, went in fumes, or 8 months and a half worked pretty well.
Wow, I'm already stressed out thinking about those 7 minutes. Yeah, actually, I have loads of questions coming, and we have lots of points to address, but one of the questions is about space tourism and some practical businesses that are actually setting place on the moon or elsewhere, and what you think of that.
Well, that's interesting. First, let me tell you what the students who sign up to study this topic for 2 years of their life think of. I took a few snapshots of what the students write in their application. And look at the last one. I plan to be on the moon before I'm 60, and I will do whatever it takes to get there. Actually, one that I didn't have it in front of me, so I could not copy it, but I remember it. Somebody said, I will be the first hotel manager on the moon. Now, remember, this is all about dream, but this is happening.